In a modest apartment on the outskirts of town, 14-year-old Michael Andrews starts his day at 5 a.m., long before sunrise. His daily routine involves taking care of his 68-year-old grandmother, Sarah, who raised him since he was a baby after his mother's death and his father's mysterious disappearance. Despite his young age, Michael has mastered the art of being both a student and a caregiver. He prepares her morning medication, makes a simple breakfast with their limited resources, and ensures she's comfortable before heading to school. At school, Michael maintains excellent grades, knowing education is his ticket to a better future. But he can't fully focus on his studies. During lunch breaks, while other students chat and play, he works on his homework under a tree in the courtyard. It's the only free time he has. His teachers notice his dedication, but also his exhaustion, as dark circles under his eyes betray his lack of sleep. His only escape is music. Between classes, he hums melodies he learned from his grandmother, who was once a music teacher before arthritis took away her ability to play the piano. The other students don't understand why he never joins their after-school activities or weekend plans. Only his best friend Tommy knows the full story and helps by sharing his lunch when Michael can't afford to buy his own. After school, Michael rushes to the local supermarket, where he works part-time stocking shelves for a few hours, earning barely enough to help with their basic needs. The store manager, Mrs. Patterson, often sneaks him leftover food from the deli section, knowing their situation but respecting Michael's pride in never accepting direct charity. The morning started like any other, but Sarah's persistent cough, which had been bothering her for weeks, suddenly became worse. While preparing breakfast, Michael heard a heavy thud from his grandmother's room. Running in, he found her collapsed on the floor, struggling to breathe, her lips turning slightly blue. His hands trembling, he called 911, remembering to grab the small box containing her medical history and medications, a routine they had practiced but hoped never to use. In the emergency room, the fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as doctors rushed around Sarah's bed. Michael sat alone in the waiting room, still in his school uniform, clutching his grandmother's worn leather purse. The hours dragged by until Dr. Martinez finally emerged, her face grave. The diagnosis was severe. Sarah's long-standing heart condition had worsened significantly, complicated by a developing respiratory infection. Her lungs were filling with fluid, and her heart was struggling to keep up. The doctor explained that without immediate intervention, the condition would continue to deteriorate rapidly. The situation became even more critical when they discovered that Sarah's old insurance policy had lapsed 3 months ago due to missed payments. Payments she had hidden from Michael to ensure he could buy new school supplies. The social worker, Miss Thompson, gently explained their options, but each seemed worse than the last. As Michael listened, he noticed his grandmother's favorite scarf had fallen from her purse, the one she wore while teaching music lessons years ago. Holding it, he could still smell her lavender perfume, and the reality of possibly losing her hit him with full force. Sitting in Dr. Martinez's office, Michael's world seemed to spin as he stared at the numbers on the medical estimate. $85,000 for the complete treatment. The doctor explained that Sarah needed an urgent specialized cardiac procedure, along with post-operative care and rehabilitation. Each item on the list added thousands more. Pre-surgery tests, the heart specialist's fee, hospital stay, medications, and follow-up treatments. The amount might as well have been $1 million. It felt equally impossible. Back home, Michael spread dozens of papers across their small kitchen table. Bank statements, insurance documents, and his grandmother's old savings book. The reality was harsh. Their savings account held only $3,247.82, mostly from Sarah's years of teaching music. He discovered unpaid bills hidden in her dresser drawer, realizing she had been skipping her own medications to save money for his school supplies. The discovery of several pawned items, receipts, including her beloved golden locket containing his mother's picture, made his heart ache even more. Desperate for solutions, Michael spent the night researching on the library's computer. He discovered that even with payment plans and medical financing, they would need at least $25,000 as a down payment to begin the procedure. Local charities were already overwhelmed with requests, and crowdfunding websites showed thousands of similar cases. The hospital's financial aid program could only cover 15% of the total cost. As he walked home in the dark, passing by the closed shops and restaurants in their neighborhood, the weight of adult responsibilities pressed down on his young shoulders. That night, unable to sleep, he heard his grandmother's muffled coughs through the thin walls and made a silent promise. He would find a way, no matter what it took. Walking home from another exhausting day at school, Michael's attention was caught by the sound of angry voices coming from Bella Luna, the local Italian restaurant. Through the window, he saw Mr. Romano, the owner, arguing with his evening's entertainment, a singer who was quitting on the spot. The restaurant had recently started hosting live music nights to compete with newer establishments in the area. As the angry performer stormed out, Michael noticed the "Help Wanted" sign swinging in the window had been hastily modified to include "Looking for evening entertainment." Remembering his grandmother's voice lessons and their duets at the old piano, Michael gathered his courage. His hands were shaking as he pushed open the heavy wooden door, the smell of garlic and fresh bread filling his nostrils. Mr. Romano, still red-faced from the argument, turned to him with an impatient, "We're not open yet," but Michael stood his ground and, in a voice barely above a whisper, offered to sing. The restaurant owner's laugh was cut short when Michael, closing his eyes and channeling every lesson his grandmother had given him, began singing "That's Amore," his grandmother's favorite Italian song. The kitchen staff stopped their prep work to listen. Mr. Romano's wife, Maria, emerged from the back office, her eyes widening. When Michael finished, the kitchen erupted in applause. Mr. Romano studied him for a long moment before asking about his age and experience. Michael's honest answer about needing to help his grandmother touched Maria's heart, who had recently lost her own mother. They offered him a trial run. He could perform during dinner service, 3 nights a week, with a small base pay, plus whatever tips the customers left in the jar. As he left the restaurant, clutching the written agreement, Michael's mind was already calculating how many months of singing it would take to reach $25,000. The evening of Michael's first performance arrived with a mix of excitement and terror. His hands were clammy as he adjusted the borrowed necktie Mr. Romano had given him. Slightly too big, but proper attire for a proper singer, as Maria had insisted. The restaurant was packed, partly because the Romanos had promoted the night as "introducing our new young talent." In the kitchen, Michael paced back and forth, his heart racing as he watched through the service window as more customers filled the tables. His first song was scheduled for 7 p.m., right after the first dinner rush. Maria had helped him choose an initial set list of classic Italian songs mixed with some popular ballads. But as the moment approached, doubt crept in. The memory of his grandmother's encouraging words during their living room lessons seemed distant now. Through the kitchen door, he could hear the bustling dining room, the clink of glasses, and the murmur of conversations. One of the waiters, Tony, noticed his nervousness and shared a story about his own first night waiting tables, trying to lighten the mood. At exactly 7 p.m., Mr. Romano called for everyone's attention and introduced Michael. Walking to the small performance area, Michael nearly tripped over a chair leg. The microphone let out a sharp squeal of feedback that made several diners wince. His first note came out shaky, barely audible. But then, scanning the room, he spotted an elderly couple that reminded him of his grandmother. The woman smiled encouragingly, and something clicked. Closing his eyes, Michael imagined he was back in his living room, singing for his grandmother. His voice grew stronger, filling the restaurant with the opening lines of "The Way You Look Tonight." By the end of the first verse, conversations had hushed, and all eyes were on him. When he finished the song, there was a moment of complete silence before the room erupted in applause. Opening his eyes, he saw several customers wiping tears, and the tip jar on the piano was already filling with bills. Word about the young singer at Bella Luna spread quickly through the small town. What started as 3 nights a week soon expanded to 5, with Mr. Romano creating special Michael's evenings that consistently packed the restaurant. Regular customers began requesting their favorite songs, and many adjusted their dining schedules to coincide with his performances. The tip jar, once a simple glass container, was replaced with a larger decorated box after customers complained they couldn't fit their contributions inside. The local newspaper ran a small feature about him in their community section, titled "Angel Voice Fills Local Restaurant," which brought even more attention. People started recording his performances on their phones, sharing them on social media. A YouTube channel created by one of the regular customers featuring clips of his songs gathered thousands of views. The comment section filled with touching stories from viewers who connected with his voice and the emotion he put into each song. Most touching were the elderly couples who became regular visitors. They would arrive early, sitting closest to the performance area, often sharing stories about their own grandchildren. Mrs. Peterson, a retired music teacher, brought him sheet music from her personal collection. Another regular, Mr. Chen, modified his hearing aids specifically for Michael's performance nights. The restaurant's atmosphere transformed during his songs. Waiters would time their service around his performances. And even the kitchen staff would pause to listen through the service window. But despite his growing local fame, Michael kept his situation private, never mentioning his grandmother's condition or their financial struggles. Every night after his performance, he would carefully count the tips, marking the growing total in a small notebook, still far from the amount needed for the surgery. It was a typical Thursday evening at Bella Luna when James Mackenzie, a renowned talent scout from Starlight Records, walked in. He had originally planned to have a quiet dinner while passing through town, but the moment he heard Michael's voice, his professional instincts kicked in. Throughout the performance, Mackenzie observed intently, noting Michael's natural stage presence and the genuine emotional connection he established with the audience. During a break between songs, he quietly asked Maria about the young singer's background. After the final set, Mackenzie approached Michael with his business card in hand. The conversation that followed in Mr. Romano's office felt surreal. Mackenzie spoke of recording contracts, studio sessions, and potential tours. The numbers he mentioned made Michael's head spin. The advance alone would cover his grandmother's surgery several times over. He talked about Michael's raw talent and marketable appeal, describing a vision of sold-out concerts and chart-topping albums. The opportunity seemed heaven-sent, exactly what Michael had been praying for. However, the contract's details revealed complicated requirements. Michael would need to relocate to Los Angeles for intensive training and recording sessions. The schedule would require him to leave school temporarily and, most importantly, move away from his grandmother. When Mackenzie mentioned that they could craft a compelling backstory about Michael's family situation for marketing purposes, something felt wrong. That night, as Michael sat by his grandmother's bedside, watching her sleep peacefully, the contract papers felt heavy in his backpack. The decision that had initially seemed so clear now weighed heavily on his conscience. He had until tomorrow evening to give Mackenzie his answer. But how could he choose between his grandmother's immediate needs and what might be his only chance at a life-changing opportunity? During one particularly busy night at Bella Luna, Michael noticed a man in a worn leather jacket who had been staring at him throughout his performance. The stranger's intense gaze made him uncomfortable, but it wasn't until the end of his set that the man approached him, tears streaming down his face. "You sound just like your mother," he said, his voice trembling. Michael froze. It was his father, David Andrews, the man who had abandoned them 10 years ago. The revelation caused a commotion in the restaurant. Mr. Romano, protective of Michael, quickly intervened, moving the conversation to his private office. There, David revealed the truth that had been hidden for a decade. He hadn't simply abandoned them. He'd been imprisoned for embezzlement, desperate to pay for Michael's mother's medical treatments before she passed away. The guilt and shame had kept him away even after his release, but he'd been secretly following Michael's progress through social media videos of his performances. But the biggest shock came when David opened his weathered wallet and pulled out newspaper clippings about Michael's performances, along with a crumpled envelope. Inside was $27,000 in cash, every penny he'd earned since his release from prison, saved specifically for Michael. He explained that he'd been working 3 jobs, living in a tiny room, saving everything he could to one day make amends. When he heard about Sarah's condition through old family connections, he knew it was time to come forward. As Michael stared at the money that could save his grandmother's life, he struggled with conflicting emotions. Relief at the solution to their financial crisis, anger at his father's abandonment, and confusion about whether to accept help from the man who had caused his family so much pain. Late one evening, after the restaurant had closed and Michael was helping to stack chairs, Maria Romano called him into the office. The usually cheerful woman seemed unusually serious as she pulled out an old photograph album. Inside was a faded picture that made Michael's heart skip a beat. It was his mother, much younger, standing next to Maria in front of Bella Luna. The truth emerged. 20 years ago, Michael's mother had been the restaurant's singer, performing the very same songs Michael now sang. Through tears, Maria explained how she and Michael's mother, Isabella, had been best friends since high school. They had dreamed of running the restaurant together, with Isabella as the star attraction. But when Isabella fell ill, she had to stop performing. The night she passed away, she made Maria promise to look after her family if they ever needed help. Maria had recognized Michael's surname when he first applied, but had waited to see if he had inherited his mother's talent before revealing the connection. She had been secretly recording all of his performances, creating a collection that captured his growth as a performer, just as she had done for his mother. Mr. Romano then stepped forward with a revelation of his own. The restaurant's recent success, thanks to Michael's performances, had allowed them to pay off their business loan early. They had been saving the extra profits in a separate account, matching every dollar in Michael's tip jar. Opening a safe behind a painting, he pulled out a bank statement showing over $30,000, more than enough for Sarah's surgery. When Michael tried to protest, Maria silenced him by playing an old recording of his mother's voice, singing the same song he had performed on his first night. "Your mother's voice saved this restaurant once," Maria said softly, "and now her son's voice has saved it again. Let us honor both by saving Sarah." In the dimly lit hospital room, Michael sat beside his grandmother's bed, 3 different envelopes laid out before him. The first contained James Mackenzie's recording contract, promising fame and fortune, but requiring immediate relocation to Los Angeles. The second held his father's money, a chance at redemption, tainted by years of abandonment. The third contained the Romanos' savings, offered with love but feeling like an impossible debt to accept. Each envelope represented a different path, a different future, and time was running out to make a decision. The talent scout had called twice already that day, pressing for an answer. The contract offered everything Michael had dreamed of: a 5-album deal, national tours, television appearances, and enough money to secure not just the surgery, but a comfortable future for both him and Sarah. But it would mean leaving his grandmother during her recovery, missing his school year, and becoming what Mackenzie called a marketable product. The scout's words about rewriting his background story and creating a more appealing narrative kept echoing in his mind, making him question the authenticity of the opportunity. As Sarah slept peacefully beside him, Michael remembered all the nights she had spent teaching him to sing, her patience during endless practice sessions, her encouragement when his voice cracked on high notes. She had sacrificed everything to raise him, even pawning her beloved possessions to keep him in school. The monitors beeped steadily, marking time as Michael wrestled with his choices. Just then, Sarah stirred and opened her eyes, immediately noticing his troubled expression. "What's wrong, my little songbird?" she asked, using her old nickname for him. In that moment, looking into her eyes, Michael realized that some forms of success couldn't be measured in dollar signs or record deals. His hand moved decisively toward one of the envelopes, his heart finally clear about what truly mattered. Every night for a week, an elderly man in an impeccable suit had been sitting alone at the corner table of Bella Luna. He always ordered the same meal: spaghetti alla vongole and a glass of mineral water. Unlike other customers who recorded Michael's performances on their phones, he simply closed his eyes and listened. One night, he requested Nessun Dorma, a piece Michael had never performed but knew from his grandmother's lessons. Despite his nervousness, Michael accepted the challenge, and when he finished, the mysterious man wiped away tears. After the performance, the man introduced himself as Dr. Victor Chen, a retired cardiac surgeon who now sat on the board of directors at St. Mary's Hospital. He had recognized the signs of emotional strain in Michael's voice, the way he poured his heart into every song. Through casual conversations with the staff, he had learned pieces of Michael's story. That night, he revealed that his own grandmother had raised him after his parents died in Hong Kong, and he had worked his way through medical school by playing piano in restaurants. The parallel to Michael's life was uncanny. Dr. Chen proceeded to pull out his phone and make a call, speaking rapidly in medical terms. When he hung up, he explained that he had arranged for Sarah's surgery to be part of the hospital's charitable care program, with him personally supervising the procedure. Moreover, he had convinced several of his former colleagues to donate their services. The $27,000 from Michael's father would more than cover the remaining expenses and post-operative care. "Music saved my life once," Dr. Chen said, sliding his business card across the table. "Now it's time for me to help another musician's family." As Michael stared at the card in disbelief, the old surgeon added with a gentle smile, "Your grandmother's surgery is scheduled for next Tuesday. I suggest you prepare a victory song." On a warm Sunday evening, 6 months after Sarah's successful surgery, Bella Luna was more packed than ever. The occasion? A special celebration dubbed a Night of Gratitude. Sarah Andrews, now fully recovered, sat at the best table in the house, surrounded by the people who had changed their lives forever. Dr. Chen, the Romanos, David Andrews, and even James Mackenzie had all come together for this momentous evening. Michael stood at his usual spot, but tonight was different. Behind him sat his grandmother's restored piano, the very one she had pawned months ago, now redeemed and returned to its rightful place. As he began to sing, his voice carried years of struggle, love, and hope. But this time he wasn't singing alone. Sarah, for the first time in years, accompanied him on the piano, her fingers dancing across the keys as if they had never stopped. Together they performed That's Amore, the same song that had started Michael's journey at Bella Luna. There wasn't a dry eye in the house as grandmother and grandson created magic together. Mr. Romano filmed the entire performance, adding it to the growing collection of precious memories that now included both mother and son. The fame and fortune promised by the record deal seemed insignificant compared to this moment. Michael had chosen to stay in school, continuing his evening performances at Bella Luna, where Dr. Chen had become a regular patron and mentor. David Andrews, working in the restaurant's kitchen, was slowly rebuilding his relationship with his son and mother-in-law. The Romanos had officially made Michael a partner in the restaurant, ensuring his future while honoring his mother's legacy. As the final notes faded away, Sarah pulled her grandson close and whispered, "Your mother would be so proud." Michael smiled, knowing that sometimes the greatest songs aren't sung on grand stages or recorded in fancy studios, but in the warm embrace of family and community. His voice had done more than just save his grandmother's life. It had brought healing, redemption, and unity to everyone it touched. The tip jar still sat on the piano, but now all its contents went to a fund helping other families facing medical emergencies. Michael's story had inspired a community initiative, turning Bella Luna into not just a restaurant, but a place where music continued to work its magic, one song at a time.